In this lesson, we're going to continue to discuss paragraph formatting. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to Open, and in the Sample Files folder, scroll down to 0703, make Align to Baseline Grid work, and just click Open. Align to Baseline Grid is a feature that is most frequently used in magazines, newspapers, newsletters, and books. Let me turn on the grid so you can see what it looks like. If you go under the View Options pop-up menu, one of the choices is Baseline Grid. I'm going to select that to turn on the grid. Besides looking like composition paper, what does it actually do? It's a way to align the baseline of each line of type to a grid. Let me zoom in a little bit closer so you can see what's going on with the type. You can see right now, if I start going across my page, the type is not lining up perfectly going across. It's kind of going up and down. It's doing whatever it wants. Also, along the bottom of the page, some of the lines of type at the ends of the columns are lining up kind of nicely, and then this next line goes up. Is there a way to make all of the lines going across the entire page, including the lines at the bottom of columns, line up perfectly? That's the way that magazines, newspapers, and books have that nice clean margin going across the bottom of the page. Let me scroll up a little bit. What Align to Baseline Grid does is it makes each one of these lines in any paragraph in which I apply that kind of formatting align perfectly to each one of the grid lines. So everything lines up perfectly. Why don't we give it a shot? I'm just going to go to my type tool, get an insert point someplace in this major text frame, and just hit Command or Control A. And down the lower right-hand corner of the paragraph panel is Align to Baseline Grid. Whoa, what just happened? Well, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. But by default, let me show you how the baseline grid actually is set up. I'm going to go into Preferences. On a Mac, I'm going to go under the InDesign Preferences Grids. On a PC, you'll find it under the Edit menu Preferences Grids. And you can see Baseline Grid is the top half of this section. And it's starting the grid 0.5 inches down from the top of the page relative to the top of the page. I could do it to the top margin, so I have a choice of ways to do it. And then it's going to have that grid, a separate grid line, once every 12 points. And then there's something called a view threshold, which says 75%, which means basically if you're looking at the view of your page under 75%, the grid is going to disappear. Let me just click OK and get back to my text. And you can see that all of my text is 12 points on 13 points. 13 points of leading. Well, if each line has 13 points of leading, there's no way for it to align to each and every grid line, which is only 12 points apart. If I, up in the control panel, if I'm in the character formatting settings, change the leading back down to 12 points, now it's working, and you can see how all of those lines going right across the page are lining up perfectly. And the bottoms of the columns are all lining up absolutely beautifully across the page to give me that nice, clean publication look. But what if I didn't want to make it 12-point type on 12-point leading? Maybe I did want it to be 13. Well, I could always change the preferences for this document. So the default could be 13 for the entire document. But what if I had certain frames in my document that I didn't want to align to the default baseline grid? I wanted to create some other grid. Well, why don't we do that? I'm just going to go over to the side, the left side. You can see that I have a frame that's off in that left margin, and maybe I want all of the text in that particular frame to align to a different baseline grid. Well, you can go to your text frame options. If you go into your Object menu with the frame selected and go to Text Frame Options, you can go to your baseline options for that particular text frame. And you can see one of the choices is Use Custom Baseline Grid. I can tell the frame exactly how I want that grid to be set up, where I want it to start, relative to either the top inset of a frame or the top of the frame or top margin in my document on this page or spread, top of the page. So I have a lot of choices. And maybe instead of 12 points, maybe I do want to make this 13 or maybe even 14 to make it so it might be easier to differentiate this grid from other grids. Maybe I'll change the color to, how about dark blue? Now you can see that it stands out from the regular default grid and it is different. Let me click OK. Select this text and align to baseline grid down the lower right-hand corner of the paragraph panel. And you can see it is aligning perfectly to that grid. We're going to continue discussing paragraph formatting in the next lesson.